What's up, y'all, and welcome back to this week's Bourbon of the Week. If this is your first time tuning into the channel, what we do is we take the bourbons in my collection, we rank them on price, taste, drinkability, we throw them on a ranking sheet, we see who can break down to the number one bourbon that I have. What I need from you guys is comments in the comment section below of bourbons that you think can top number one on the list. This week, as you can already see, we're at Four Roses Distillery, so that's what we're drinking today. We have Four Roses small batch, 90 proof bourbon, but more importantly, I'm going to go over how Four Roses labels their batches and how you can know exactly what you're getting when you're getting a Four Roses batch. I've seen a couple of videos and a lot of them make them very confusing, so I think today we're going to break it down pretty simply so you can understand how Four Roses works. Let's get to it. All right, so here we are. Let's get started. Four Roses small batch. See how much better that sounds that way? Pour it up. Beautiful. And before we get started, everybody knows, time for the traditional sip. Much better bourbon than last week. Now, we've been talking about the mash bill for the last couple of weeks, and let me tell you, Four Roses makes it very simple and yet very confusing at the same time. They are very open and upfront about their recipes, about their mash bills, and even more about what goes into their whiskey, more than some other people are. Some people don't even disclose the mash bill in fear that somebody might try and copy their whiskey. Four Roses is not one of those people, and what they do, they actually take two different mash bills, make 10 different recipes, and they put 4 of those together in the small batch that we have here. Now let me break it down for you. The first mash bill, we're going to call that E. Make sure you remember that. 75% corn, 20% rye, 5% barley. The second mash bill, let's call that B. Please remember that as well. 60% corn, 35% rye, 5% barley. And I know what you're thinking, Chris, first of all, why'd you give them a letter? Second of all, why are there two different mash bills? What Four Roses does is they take two different mash bills and 5 different recipes to technically create 10 different bourbons. And in this particular bourbon, they have these 4 recipes. They are acronyms. So we're going to go OBSO is one of the bourbons that they make. OBSK is a second bourbon that they make. OESK is a third bourbon that they make. OESO is a fourth bourbon that they make. All 4 of those different distilled bourbons go into this Four Roses. I don't know if that's why they call it Four Roses, because there's 4. I would have to learn more about the other bourbons rather than just the small batch. But those 4 particular bourbons go into this. Now, the way they break it down. O, the first letter, stands for Four Roses Distillery. Every single batch of stuff made by Four Roses starts with an O. The second is the mash bill. B/E. I talked about earlier. So out of the 4 that we're using, 2 of them are two of the mash bills. 2 of them are the other 2 mash bills. The third letter is always S, and that stands for straight whiskey. So that's what we're drinking on today. Kentucky straight whiskey. Simple as that. The last one is the most complicated, but the most complex part of the system. That goes for the yeast strain. They have 5 different yeast strains. We're only dealing with 2 in the small batch. We're dealing with K and we're dealing with O. So those are the only 2 that I'm going to mention. K is a slight spice and O is a rich fruit. They do have 3 other strains. We're not dealing with those today, so let's just stick with these 2 for right now. So what does that bring us to? That brings us to drinkability on this. This does have a 20% rye. This also has a 35% rye in the same recipe here. So I wouldn't call it a high rye mash, but it's higher than some other ones that we have. And you can definitely pick up a little bit of a spicy note. But as for drinkability, as for smoothness, as for that ethanol flavor, there's almost 0 kick to this. And this is a 90 proof bourbon. 45% alcohol by volume, 90 proof bourbon. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. But for a 90 proof bourbon, this drinks very smooth, very easy. I wouldn't even put an ice cube in it. And I would have put an ice cube in 2. I would have put 2 ice cubes in last week. And I've always been a fan of Four Roses. They make a very good product. You've always been able to see them on the shelf. You'll find them on the shelf. They have a couple different things in their line. So as for the small batch, drinkability, this is going to get a pretty good score. I'm going to break this down to like an 8.9. I was going to say 8.8, but I wanted to give it that extra little oomph because this is good. This is smooth. You're really going to enjoy this. You're not going to be getting that flavor of ethanol where you just kind of make that weird face and have no idea what you're actually drinking on. You'll be able to pull some flavors out of this, which we'll get into next with taste. Getting into taste on this, the best thing about Four Roses is they make it simple. They literally tell you the taste in that last letter. So we're dealing with 2 Ks, 2 Os. What do you get when you drink this? Right off the bat, you get rich fruit, you get a slight spice. Other than that, you get a little bit of an oaky flavor, no smoke, which I love. I'm not a big fan of the smoky flavor. A little bit of an oaky flavor, and then it feels like it's almost creamy the way that, with how smooth it is and those flavors, it's like a creamy flavor straight into a little bit of spice with no burn and no afterkick. I really like this a lot. The taste profile complements each other very well. That fruity flavor at first, followed up with that spice at the end of the taste, really gives this a unique profile, and it's delicious. Can't complain about it at all. This is going to get a great score on taste. I'm going to break it down to like an 8.7. Definitely one of my favorites that I've ever had. Four Roses really knows what they're doing. And the best part is, like I said, if you're new to the bourbon world, you can pick out right away what these flavors are because they tell you. As for price on this, this comes in here in Pennsylvania at $32.99, which is an awesome price for a Four Roses bottle. It's a name brand. You're going to be able to find it anywhere. It's a 90 proof bourbon. It's delicious. And the most amazing part about it is they're literally making 10 different bourbons and using 4 of those just in this one bottle. So the process that has to happen for that, they got to clean out machines after every batch. They have to make sure that they're running enough of each batch. So just to keep that price at under $35 when we have some bottles up there that are $50, $60 running off one batch, quite amazing if you ask me. As for price on this, I'm going to give this I might put this in the 9s for the first time. I'm going to give it a straight 9.0 on price. And I think it deserves to be up there. $32 bottle, delicious, perfect for a new person to the bourbon world. If you're a beginner, you haven't had a bourbon before, and you really want something to sip on, this flavor profile, this price range, and this drinkability is really a perfect combination for a new bourbon drinker. Might be the number one thing that I recommend from now on to anybody who's trying to get into the bourbon world. That's going to break our average down to an 8.86 repeating. We'll just call it 8.87. And that, I believe, puts Four Roses small batch at the top of the list where I think it belongs. But of course, before we do that, we have to make sure it's a fair fight. So I'm going to grab the Russells, which has been sitting on top for a couple of weeks now. I'm going to grab a bottle of that from off the shelf back here, and we're going to do a side-by-side comparison to make sure that Four Roses deserves to dethrone Russell's Reserve. So here we have it, Russell's Reserve off the Wild Turkey line. Going to see how it compares to the Four Roses small batch. Russell's Reserve, been sitting at the top of the list for a couple of weeks now. I think it deserves to be dethroned, but the only fair way to do it is a side-by-side comparison. Four Roses small batch, Russell's Reserve Wild Turkey. We're going Four Roses first, see if it can dethrone Wild Turkey. That is good. That is really, really good. Cleanse the palate a little. I haven't had this in a while. Let's see. Ooh, that is still good too. So this was a $35 bottle. This was a $33 bottle. The Russell's got an 8.4. The Four Roses is currently sitting at an 8.87, but I do want to fix one thing. The Russell's is definitely smoother, drinkability-wise, than the Four Roses. The Four Roses has a tiny bit of a kick more, and I don't think it's just because of that rye. It does have a little bit of spice because of that rye like we talked about, but this Russell's, I mean, there's nothing. It literally feels like water compared to this Four Roses that has a bit of a kick. So we're going to do something I've never done on this channel. We're going to drop the drinkability on this Four Roses to an 8.4. I gave the Russells an 8.5. I'm going to give the Four Roses an 8.4. We're going to recalculate and see what we get. With the recalculation in, that's still going to put our Four Roses at an 8.70, 0.3 ahead of the Russell's Reserve, and that's going to put it number 1 on our list, dethroning Russell's, which has been up there for a few weeks right now. I personally like the Four Roses better. Tasting them side by side, it's not even close to me. The flavor on this one is a lot better than the flavor on this one, while the drinkability on this one is slightly better than the drinkability on the Four Roses. So if you want something with real good flavor, you want something with a little bit of spice but not a lot of kick, Four Roses small batch is going to be the one you want to pick up. Russell's is definitely a great contender. Still deserves to be towards the top of the list. But as for right now, we're going to give it to Four Roses. Number 1 on the list right now. If you think you have a bourbon that can dethrone Four Roses, put it in the comments section below. But in the meantime, we're going to throw this over. I promised Marissa I would give her a good bourbon to sip on. I think she's going to be pleasantly surprised with the Four Roses. So let's send it over to Rissa's Reviews and see what she thinks. Here we have it. Four Roses small batch. Rissa's Reviews coming in. See what she thinks about it.
I'm excited for this one.
Why is that?
I've heard this kind is good. Time for the traditional sip.
Time for the traditional sip. Not as much of a face that time. Still a little hot?
I like the smell of it.
What's it smell like?
Like caramely.
Caramely? Mm-hmm. A little caramel.
It's definitely like smoother.
Smooth. Easy
but
sipper.
Still burns for me.
But this has a little bit of a rye. So the way that Four Roses work, they use a certain yeast that has a spiciness. So again, do you think that the burn is from the alcohol, or do you think it's the flavor?
I'm gonna test it
Test
again.
it out. One more try. You sip so slow.
I can tell some of the spiciness is from the flavor.
From the flavor.
Yes.
So
and
is
not
it
just the
better or
alcohol.
worse than the last two that you've had?
Definitely better, but I would
Definitely
not
better?
drink it.
Well, you wouldn't
On
drink
purpose.
any bourbons. How else would you drink it, by accident?
Yeah.
I put it number 1 on the list.
Really?
I did.
I'd have to try the Matthew McConaughey one.
That's not what's number 1.
Oh, is that number 2?
That's number 2.
I'll
Glad
have to
you've been
try.
keeping up on the bourbon of the week.
Number
My
one
biggest
is-
supporter, everybody.
Wait, number 1 is also from the same distillery, though.
Right, which distillery?
Wild Turkey.
Wild Turkey. Which is it, though?
First kind of liquor I ever had at a bar when I was 21.
Was
It
Wild
didn't end
Turkey?
well. Yes. But I want to try the number 2 now.
You want to compare the Russells to the Four Roses?
We don't have to do that right now.
Yeah, we can do it right now.
I want to know why this deserves to be number 1.
I already have my glass of the Russell's Reserve
Oh, you
here.
did that tonight?
I did it. You had to I
See,
had
I'm
to
a
make sure.
professional. I know what is supposed to happen.
You have your water? Hold on, let me get your water.
Oh, yes.
We'll try the
Yes.
Russells together.
Time for the second sip.
We can't even coin the first phrase. You're going to try and coin the second one?
Time for the competitive sip.
Still, that ain't it. If you know what we should call the competition, put it in the comment section below.
Competitive.
Yeah, I get
competition.
it. Cheers.
Cheers.
See how it is compared.
This one kind of smells like nail polish.
Remover?
No, just the regular. I don't know.
You don't know?
I kind of like this one better.
Because it's smoother.
Yeah, I like the Russell's better.
But now taste that and then taste this and tell me which one has more flavors.
Right. Yes, this has more flavor.
More flavor.
And more bite.
More spicy.
Spicy.
Right. And the Four Roses I just think is a little bit better. And it only beat it by 0.3. I think it's a fair spot for it. But we'll take Rissa's reviews into consideration for the next bourbon that we try. Russell's versus Four Roses. If you think you know a bourbon that can top number 1 on the list, make sure you put it in the comment section below. If you haven't already, click that like, click that subscribe. We're doing our next
it.
giveaway at 100 subscribers, which is only a couple away here. So if you click that subscribe button, you could be entered in the next giveaway. And in the meantime, don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly. And as always,
Wash your hands.
wash your hands. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.
See ya. Yeah, it's
For
definitely
me.
smoother.
Like, I don't want something that I'm going to be like...